Hello, unlimited minds. I am over the moon excited today because I have Karen Money Williams with me here today for this interview. And many people know Karen because she runs a beautiful, massive Abraham Hicks Law of Attraction group. And I'm not going to tell you much more about her. All I'm going to say is Karen. One of the things that I've always been curious and never really asked you about is your name. Karen Money Williams. Did you add the money or were you born with the money?
I was born with that name. I was born with it. And it is so funny because people do think that I gave myself that name, and it would be a good name to have. But that is my family name, is Money. And the funny part is that it's not that uncommon in the little town where I come from. There's several families of Money. So nobody ever really thought much about it. And one family, the daughter was named Penny Money, and the son was named Bill Money. That's an absolute truth. And so Karen Money, that was kind of a blasé compared to Penny and Bill Money. But wherever I've gone since then, around country, people don't seem to have ever heard of that last name, but that is my last name, and
Because
it
I
was
was
my last name.
curious about it for years and it always slips my mind. I'm going to ask Karen, where does that name come from? Did you give yourself that name? Oh my goodness. Thank you, because now my curiosity has been satisfied. I love it. Thank you. Thank you.
I am happy.
Say is Karen, thank you for being here. And will you please share a story with us that helps us to see how law of attraction works from your own life?
Thank you, Sarah. I am really, truly honored to be here. And I have followed your work for many, many years. And I appreciate so much, because I am really into Abraham Hicks. I appreciate all that you've shared about that and law of attraction over many years. I followed you before I ever even knew you in person like this. And so I am really honored to be here and to share my story, because I got me a story. And I'll just figure out where to start, but it's not really hard, and it's so fun. It's fun to tell my story. So I will start right at the beginning. I grew up in Indiana in the United States, and I had a good childhood. I will have to say, I had a good childhood. I was an only child of older parents, and I was doted on, and I had lots of toys. I had me lots and lots of toys and no siblings to mess anything up. So I had a really good life. And so I went off to college, but I wanted to be a psychologist. I always felt that there would be a way to help people be happier. And I myself felt actually very happy at that time. And I felt like that, I wanted to help others, and I wanted to learn about psychology. And I used to read about Freud even in high school. And people would say, "What's that you're reading?" And I'm like, "Well, it's Freud. Okay. I'm going to be like Freud someday." Well, anyway, so I went to college, and um, things changed. I went to a small college, and I got really serious about things. I'd been lighthearted and happy, and then I wanted to be such a good student, and I wanted to be the best at this and the best at that. I got too intense. I got too intense for my own good. And the college was challenging.
What do you mean
Yes,
you got too intense? Like, unpack that for me. What does that mean? You got too intense.
too intense. I I took it too seriously. I studied too much. I had not enough fun by the end of my college. And I had my sights set on being a psychologist, and I had this career path, and I had it all figured out. and it was all going to come together just like that. But I felt very anxious much of the time then. I wasn't that happy person that I used to be, but heck, I was, I had this career in sight, and I was going to make the best of it and be the best at it. By golly. And so anyway, yeah, so I and
Sounds
then
familiar to me, honestly, Karen. Sounds familiar.
I've heard you say something to that effect, and I thought, whoa, I can relate to Zara,
Uh-huh.
because
Uh-huh. Yeah,
yes,
yeah, yeah, yeah. Mm.
yes, we are kindred spirits.
Oh, yes.
Yes, I just, life became very, very serious, and
How
I
did it
became
show up? When you say life became very serious, how did it show up? Did it show up in your body? Did you get sick? Did it show up in your head? Like, did it show up in your relationships? How did it show up?
very good question. Yeah, it showed up as kind of uh well, let's see what I would say. It took a while to show up in my body. That took a while.
Mm-hmm.
It did it,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll tell that part here in a minute. But at that time, it just showed up as anxiety, and
Okay.
as we have learned, if you have negative emotion, and I
Mm-hmm.
certainly didn't know this at the time, and I didn't know what to do about the anxiety, but if you have that and you don't do anything to soothe it, well,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and the great irony was that I was trying to become a psychologist, and so one of my friends said, I don't think you're doing so great. You need to talk to the school psychologist. And I'm like, no. But so I talked to him, and I said, well, I'm going to be a psychologist. And he's like, and he goes, well, you need to be pretty well put together for that. And I thought, what do you mean by that? And I didn't that so it was becoming more and more ironic and weird. And so then I had one professor I babysat his kids, and he was such a good friend, and he encouraged me in every way he could. And I did apply to 2 or 3 graduate schools and didn't get in. I actually did not get in, even though I was like a straight student. I
Mm.
get into my graduate school.
Mm.
And that was it was just life
Must have been
saying,
such a blow,
it
right?
was, because I'm like, I had this all planned out, and
Yeah.
yet I knew that my psychology at the time was not what it needed to be by any stretch of the imagination. But at any rate, so I graduated from college, and my friends, of course, they didn't live around there, and they went off. I did live actually in India. My college was in Indiana, but
Mm-hmm.
anyhow, I was just lost. I thought, well, what am I going to do? I was going to do that, and I had it all planned out. And so I went out west to visit my a good friend from since 8th grade, Barbara. We're still friends to this day. And so I went out to visit her. But before I did that, there was a guy that was on TV a lot. And he see, I'm trying to think of his name, but anyway, he was sort of a rock star of a psychologist at that time. Now, this was in the early 70s, we shall say, around that time. And so I got kind of taken by this guy, and he had some bestseller books, and Primal Therapy, Arthur Janoff, Primal Therapy. I thought, that's my missing link. I'll do Primal Therapy. And so I went out to visit my friend Barbara. And but before I did that, I went to North Los Angeles, and where I've never even hardly been on a plane, let alone out there. But anyway, I went there and to interview with this guy's wife. And I just said, hi, I want to become a primal therapist. And so it consisted of people going in a room with a therapist and just screaming their
Okay.
lungs out. And
Yeah.
then you would, release that type of thing. And so she said, well, that's fine, but it's $4,000 to have the therapy. You have to have the therapy to be a therapist, of course. And I said, well, I like at my college, like I did a work study, and I would like to do that here, a work study. Well, they didn't do work studies. I was so naive and so young. And so then that came crashing down. Visited my friend Barbara, and then I flew back home, and as I was flying over the Grand Canyon, I thought, my life is a Grand Canyon. Nothing is working out. And plus I had all this anxiety. So as we were going over the Grand Canyon, the pilot said, "This is the Grand Canyon." And I'm looking up. And then when I thought about my life being a Grand Canyon, I just started to cry and cry and cry and cry and cry and cry and carry on like that. And I thought, there must be something more. There must be, maybe there is. I had felt that I didn't really believe that there was any higher power, but I had gone to Sunday school and church regularly as a child, but I didn't believe that anymore. But I thought maybe I should rethink that. Maybe there is a God, and maybe, he's Hindu, or maybe he's Buddhist, or maybe he's, who knows what he is. But I believe I'm going to open up to that. I was just trying everything. And so then I get back home, and I'm staying with my mom and dad. And my mom said, "There's a new church in town, Karen, and it's a Bible church, and I would like you to go with me." And I'm like, okay, no, I don't want to do that. But I felt I should, or she'd be really mad at me. And so,
We've all done things like that to please other people, right?
yes, exactly, to please other people. I thought, well, I'll keep peace in the family. So I went to the church. And it wasn't what I thought it would be. I thought it would be just kind of cut and dried and okay. And the people were like sort of on fire for, so to speak, for Christianity. They were like really excited about God and about Jesus. And the minister he'd been an evangelist, and they had gotten him to be the pastor. And everybody was like, I mean, even like going in there, their eyes, their pupils were large, because it was like they were just joyful. I'd never seen anything like it. And then I thought, I think I want some of that. So one night I went back, and I was with my
Want
mom.
the joy, right? You want the joy.
I
That's
wanted the joy. I mean, and I could not really envision myself feeling it that way, but hey, when you've got anxiety all the time and you see people with love and joy, I mean, you're definitely interested in it, suddenly interested. And so one night I was there at prayer meeting with my mom, and he asked if anybody, the minister asked if anybody would like to receive Jesus Christ as Savior. And I just saw my hand like go up like that. And I'm like, "Hand, what are you doing?" And then and I went forward, and I knelt in prayer, and I received Christ as Savior. And that was very amazing for me. And that became the next 15 years, not 50, but 15 years of my life. I became an evangelical Christian. And that, in many, many ways, was just perfect for me at the time. It was perfect.
yes.
Community of very, very wonderful people. You're instantly part of this family. And it
Yeah.
was it was very, very loving group. And I enjoyed myself a
It
lot.
was
I
what you
learned.
needed at that time in your life. So
Exactly. It was
yeah,
exactly what I needed. I was
yeah,
asking, and that came to me in the form that I was somewhat familiar with. And I stayed there right in my hometown, stayed with my mom and dad, and then got my own apartment, met a fellow in church now who was very cute. And I ended up marrying him, and we had 2 sons. And we lived in a little town outside of the other town, which was only 7,000. So it's a small town. I'm from a small town in rural America, but that was a wonderful place to grow up and a
mhm,
good place to raise kids. And so I
yes.
was kind of set. And, I had God, I had my husband, I had my 2 sons, I had a house, and then things.
Were you working? Sorry, tell me, were you working at when you
Yes, I was. I
did you
got a
go into
job.
psychology? Did you actually go into psychology? You did.
I did. My whole world was seen through the lens of Christianity, but I got
Yes.
a job in the courthouse working in the probation department,
Oh,
using my degree, working with volunteers in
beautiful.
probation.
Yes.
And yeah, and so people knew I was everything, at the first chance I get, I'm going to talk about Christianity, but uh, everybody knew that about me. But anyway, my job was to train volunteers to work with kids on probation. And I had a wonderful boss. He was very, very nice, and he wasn't a Christian, but he was very respectful and just very, very nice. So yeah, I had that going and everything kind of going. And then my husband became schizophrenic.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, just I didn't know.
Like,
I had no
no.
idea that he had any tendencies that way. I hope I didn't
Yes.
drive him crazy. There was always that doubt in my mind. Wait a minute, did I? Because maybe, yeah.
Oh my
But
goodness.
but anyhow, yeah, so the church, I had my pastor in the church, and they were so supportive and helpful of me, to me, and with me, and then I had him put in to, honestly, it was he did, a lot of times folks with schizophrenia don't necessarily know that they
Yes.
are, they don't,
No, they don't.
that's a,
They don't know.
they
Yes.
don't know, they do not know, and they believe they're different psychotic things. And so but I had great support, and I had him put a couple of times that he was a veteran of the Vietnam War. He'd been in Vietnam, done 2 tours of duty, driving explosive trucks. And so anyway, I did have him hospitalized a couple of times, and he got on medication. Things would be better for a while, and then he'd say, I don't need this medication. I don't need it. And I'm like, oh yes, you do need it. And we'd be back and forth like that. And so that went on for quite a while, and I was very, very stressed, and I got cancer.
Oh my goodness, Karen.
I know, it's quite a story, but
So between his diagnosis and your cancer, how much time passed by?
that's a good question. Yeah, it was maybe a couple years, actually, a couple of years. But I had, a lot of anxiety, which Christianity helped me a lot with that. But it still wasn't completely as good, say, as it is today.
So wait a second, you got over one form of anxiety and you landed into another form of anxiety because of your husband's diagnosis. And then you got into your own anxiety over your health.
Yeah,
Oh
yeah,
my goodness.
it was.
So
I
at this point, was he in an institution or was he at home?
He was hospitalized briefly, 2 or 3 times, but he was mainly at home.
Okay.
And then he was going to the local mental health clinic, and then he would go off his medicine, and then there's nothing much that could be
All
done
right.
about
Yeah. Yeah.
it.
And
Yeah,
was he able to hold down any type of work?
he he was without work when he was
Diagnosed? Yeah.
yeah,
And he
but
had his
yeah,
episodes, I guess.
when he had
Yes.
his episodes, but for the most part, he did actually continue to work. He was a long distance truck driver, and he, because he had done that in the military, and so he just did it when he got out, and he made good money at it. And he drove like long distances
Right.
across the country, and he was a good guy. I mean, he was a good guy. He definitely was. He passed away a couple of years ago, but his name was Sam, and he um anyway, I just knew that especially when I got sick like that,
Yes.
I
That's right.
couldn't stay there. I had to.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
moved my boys, my 2 boys, and I moved back in with my mom and dad, and they
Okay.
were always there for me. And so we lived with them for 5 years. I took chemo and radiation, and I got over it. I had Hodgkin's lymphoma is what I had, stage 4B in my chest, a big old honking tumor. Uh, I mean, I laugh about it now because it's been so many years. I mean, it
Yes.
wasn't so, but I kind of laughed about it back then because I also learned that, I was learning the hard way. You can't take life too seriously.
Yes,
If
that's
you
right.
take it too seriously, it's gonna, you
You have
gotta
to
laugh at, you
caution
gotta
some.
laugh at stuff. You just have to. And
Yeah.
that's one of my biggest things to this day is I love to share funnies and jokes because I understand the value of not taking things too seriously. I used to do that. And so yeah, I got well, and we got divorced, and I met another fella through a Christian pen pal club. And I worked as a church secretary for those
Okay.
years,
Okay.
and part-time as I got better and better. And
Yes.
I worked
Yes.
at our church, and I was the church pianist. My whole life was a church, and I loved it. But I did, after I got well, though, I thought I did have some questions about why would I get that cancer.
Yes.
I mean, I know I was under too much stress. I
Yes.
didn't quite understand the connection. I mean, and I was still looking to God to intervene. And I just didn't know why God would even let me get that if it's all about God.
Yes.
And
Yes.
then at the library, I started reading some library books, psychology and such, that I hadn't read for a long time, and in that genre. And I decided I found one book. Was a pivotal time in my life. I found a book called Mind as Healer, Mind as Slayer. And
Mm.
I thought, but wait, is it God or is it mind or is it both or what is it? Just
Good
what is it?
question. I had that same question, but keep going. Because yes,
Yeah.
it's so much
I
questions.
mean, I
Yes.
know
Yes.
you get so you just
Oh, this is
wonder.
so interesting. Wow.
Yes.
Yes.
So I just the title of that book, I did read it. It was a tome, and it had all these clinical studies of people who had gotten cancer and other serious things, but after long periods of stress. And so I thought, I believe that must be that must be true. At least it's true in my case.
Yes.
But so I never forgot that. But I went on with the Christianity, and I married my second husband. He was in Oregon. We met through this Christian pen pal club, and he came to Indiana. We got married in my church where I'd married my first husband and my same pastor. We got married again. I got married again. And then he had two sons. I had two sons. And we put our family together.
Right.
And then we moved to Ashland, Oregon, which was a beautiful town. I'd never been to Oregon. And so that's where I spent the next 15 years. No, maybe 10 years. No, 15. The next 15 years in Ashland, Oregon, which was just really a great place. And the boys grew up. My husband, though, before they grew up, my second husband, Ed, um, did karate, and he was without work for a while, and he was under a lot of stress. And then at that same time, I was starting to have misgivings and about my Christian faith. And he knew that. And he was very, very worried because he taught Bible studies at the church. And he was just like, he read the Greek Old Testament, New Testament, the Greek New Testament. He was really, really kind of a Bible scholar. And this was his world. And he could see me kind of like not being so into it. And so, anyway, he had me hauled in to the church pastor a couple of times and to talk to him about my doubts, and which was fine because I had them and I just confessed to them. I just said, I don't know where I'm going to end up with this. And so anyway, the pastor warned me about such things, but that was his job. And then my husband died. Ed died suddenly at the YMCA
Oh
at
my gosh.
doing karate. Yeah, he died like that. And by that time we had a daughter, and she was 2 years old. And her name is Emily, and she is now 33. But anyway, yeah, he passed suddenly. And so as hard and as shocking as that was, his older son was in the Marines. His second son was a senior in high school and about to go into the Marines, and then my sons were in high school or thereabouts, and so they were growing up. But anyhow, it gave me a chance, actually, after he passed. This sounds crass, but it did give me a chance to explore what I had been wanting to explore, which was like spirituality, like meditation, and which I was not ever allowed to even think about in our household, but meditation and just all kinds of things, just all of it that we crystals, just all kinds of healing work, all of it. I explored all of it. I became a Reiki master. I did in the coming years. And because it was so fascinating to me. And I went to Unity Church, which I absolutely loved. I love Unity to this day. And I really felt that I had kind of found it. I'd really kind of found what I was looking for in spirituality. Almost found it, just not quite found it, but almost. But I was getting closer, much closer. And so coming away from Christianity was a big deal, a very, very big deal. But I knew that if I didn't follow my heart, if I followed what people told me I should be doing,
Yes.
that wasn't going to be good for me. I knew that I had to feel aligned. I didn't know about alignment as Abraham teaches it at that time, but I knew that if I didn't feel aligned with myself within, then there was going to be, who knows, sickness, any kind of things that I could bring upon myself. So
Yes.
I did leave the church and lost my friends, most of them, not all of them, but I lost. That was, just all of a sudden, but I knew I had to do it. So then as I did all that exploration, and but it still didn't seem quite right. My mom came to live with me after my dad died then, and in Oregon, and I was sick kind of a lot of the time. I was just always kind of borderline sick with sinus headaches. And I loved Ashland. It's a gorgeous area. It's so fantastic. But the climate wasn't right for me. I needed a warmer climate. So I got to researching and I thought, aha, Florida. So anyway, long story short, I moved to Florida with my mom, who was 90, and my daughter, who was 10, and a sick dog who had diabetes. I moved him here to the Orlando area because I felt that if I didn't do it, I felt that I really needed to do it for me. And they didn't want to come, but I knew that I was responsible for them and I had to keep myself in some semblance of health. Yeah. And so I moved here. And when I got here, it was the coldest winter that Orlando had for a long time. And the realtor said, bring your winter coat because it does get cold here. And I'm like, but I'm wanting to get away from the cold. But anyway, so I get here and it's cold. But I'm like, you know what? I've done everything I can for myself. This I did for me. I did a big thing, moved across the country for myself, out of self-love. If this isn't warm enough, I don't know what else to do, because I really do want to stay in the country. So I did this for me, and so be it, whatever. If it's a cold place, it's a cold place. I'd walk the dog around and it just was so cold, or so it seemed to me. It was much colder than I anticipated. Didn't stay cold long though. But anyhow, in the mail comes a little brown box, a little cardboard box, and it has 2 or 3, I can't recall, tapes in it. And they are Abraham Hicks tapes sent to me by a very close friend, Alice, in Ashland. And she said, I've given you these tapes before, but you never said anything about them. So I don't know if you heard them. And I'm like, I've never heard these tapes. I don't know these tapes. Who is this person? Abraham Hicks, who is it? And so anyway, 23 years ago, I was sitting in my kitchen and listening to these tapes thinking, That's kind of strange. It's kind of what I agree with, but it's kind of strange too. And didn't know
Oh,
what
I
to.
know those tapes, and Esther didn't sound like she does just now. So
I know those
I
early.
I know the tapes you're talking about. I had those were my first tapes of Abraham as well, and she sounded so strange in them. Oh my goodness. Yes.
Yes, yes. And there was just some little things, aspects of it that where
Yeah.
she was speeding and she had the in on the highway to get to an airport or
Yes.
something with
Yes.
Jerry, and I thought I don't know because I was kind of very rigidly a straight arrow, and I still am, but I'm not as rigid about it. But I thought, oh, I wouldn't speed, and I don't think I want to listen to somebody that would speed on the highway. What kind of a spiritual person is that? And so I just but I continued to listen, and I ran onto somebody at Unity who also had tapes, and I said, and we shared tapes, and she's like, she says, and there's a an Abraham Hicks meeting at a bookstore in this town in Orlando. And I'm like, really? And she goes, you want to go? And I'm like, yeah, I want to go. And
Goodness.
so we
I,
went.
and I'm seeing all the synchronicity in your story, which I'm sure you're gonna rip off, but come on, keep going.
I
I'm so
love
enthralled with your story. Just keep going,
I
Karen.
I love that synchronicity. That is so wonderful
Oh,
because
I know, I love it. So
I
you went, you and your friend?
we did, and we came away. Uh, I felt, I don't know how she felt because she was more into Neil Donald Walsh, which is fine and dandy. I love his teachings, but I was very taken by Abraham, and so then we went. I began to go regularly to this monthly meeting, and find and then just more and more and more. And in fact, I at Unity Church, I asked some of the leaders, is there any chance you could have like an Abraham meeting like here? I was like new in the church, and I don't,
Yeah,
that's not like me to be that
yeah.
bold. I was just like craving Abraham everywhere when I wanted to have Abraham here,
I know
Abraham.
that feeling. I know that feeling. Yes.
I know you do, because
Yep.
I've heard you
Yep.
say that. Yes, I just couldn't get enough of it. And so but then in the meantime, I was going over to the spiritual gathering in the next town over. We live in the suburbs of Orlando. We don't really live right in Orlando. And so I was going to a spiritual meeting, and I met who would become my partner for like 20 years, and that's Mark. And we live here together. And so through that, and so I was able to tell him and his then wife, that's a crazy story too, about Abraham, and they got tapes, and then they went to Abraham and they heard Abraham here in Orlando, and then they told me all about it. I didn't feel like I could afford it at that time, but they told me all about it, and they really got into it, and it helped. They were having some difficulties, and it helped their marriage at the time, but ultimately their marriage didn't last, and she took off and was gone for quite a while, and I was kind of a liaison to kind of help. I thought I would get them back together, but because she had become a good friend of mine, more so than he, but as it turned out, she didn't come back. She told me to quit talking about him. And so I thought, well, whatever. And then he and I connected. As I say, we've been together for 20 years. So that's kind of that story. So what I wanted to say basically is, I guess it was all these as I'm tying up these loose ends, and what I've learned when I found Abraham, that was it for me. That and I'm not saying I'm not open to other belief systems. I am, and I love, I just feel like there's so much wonderful stuff out there, and I like all of it, almost all of it. I just like it. But for me, it's really the after that long drawn out search, Abraham Hicks is what I have resonated with, and law of attraction. That has made the most sense to me. And so then I guess it's been about 11 years ago, Mark and I, my partner, started the Abraham Fun Group on Facebook. And and we didn't, it was him and me, it was just the two of us. And I thought, well, I mean, we'll just see what happens, because I was starting to do writings about Abraham, because I put it in my own words, and I called them soul songs, and we published a little book. And then and so I just wanted to share those, and I thought, well, if I have my own group, then I can share those, and that's really why I did it. And I had no idea it was going to grow as it did grow, and all, and we were like, whoa. And so I'm just so glad about that, and I just so appreciate all the folks that are there in the Abraham Fund group, and the other groups though too. I'm in a lot of Abraham groups, and they're all just great. I wish I had. No, I'm not going to say I wish I had more time. Time is always perfect to go where we want to go and learn what we want to learn. And so that kind of brings me up to today, but it's about, applying this perspective, which I really haven't said that much about the perspective itself, but applying it to daily life. And I know that's what you help people do. You immensely through your books and your coaching and your groups. That for me is it's what I kind of live for, is to first of all apply it to myself, because that I can't say I got it down pat, but it's always, there are always new things that, like, you feel like, oh, I got this mastered. I got this negative emotion all ironed out, and then something else comes up and you're like, oh, well, and now I gotta iron that out. But I mean, Abraham says, you'll never get it done. You'll never get it wrong, because you'll never get it done. We are eternal beings, and we are always going to have things come up, and we won't maybe feel like, oh, we'll feel negative emotion. And that's our indication that we need to adjust our thinking. And so it's all about mental focus. And while I say that, I just wanted to, I know that Mark and I had, I know I'm jumping around, we had Abraham meetings in our home here for years and years and years. Well, about 15 years, up until COVID. And that was a lot of fun. Now, we don't do that now, but we're doing it at the library. We started doing it at the library just a few months ago. So we have Abraham Hicks meetings at our local public library. But when we were having these meetings, I don't know if that
good things will happen.
Yes. So I thought, if I could sum this perspective up in one phrase, one sentence, what would it be? And so I made, years and years ago, I made up this bumper magnet, and I pulled this off of the refrigerator and we have one on our car, and we have around on different metal doors. And because I do feel, I mean, it is such a simple perspective, as you know, it's simple, and yet it's because, I mean, the understanding of it isn't hard, and none of it's really hard once you get the hang of it. It's very easy, and it's very life-changing. But it does take some vigilance to keep, when something new comes up and I start to go into a downward spiral, because I still can, then I have the tools now to change that and to soothe my thoughts. It's about thoughts. Thoughts. But how do we know how we're thinking? We do it through how we feel. And when I started out interested in psychology and all of this, I do feel like I've gone in a circle. I'm kind of back where I started, knowing.
I want to ask you some questions about this now.
Yes.
Amazing story. First of all, Karen, I am so grateful that you shared with such an open heart this story. But I'm very curious now to ask you, what do you think of Christianity now? Because I'll tell you why I'm asking this question. Because I come across many people who are so confused about their religion. They're confused about Islam, they're confused about Christianity, they're confused about Buddhism. there's a lot of confusion, and people feel like when they're stepping into law of attraction that they might be giving up their religion. My experience has been the reverse, but I want to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, so you're asking about religion, what I think about religion now.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, I love it all. I think it's all good. It's good. All of it is good if it helps people to be happier and to find meaning in life. I mean, there for a while I had a lot of I was mixed up about Christianity. And then because I thought, you know, and I felt guilty about leaving and all of those things, but that's all like water under the bridge for me anyway. I think all religions are just fine, and it's just they are so valuable to people. And I still do have some close friends, a few close friends who are evangelical Christians, and we just don't talk about our differences. We just talk about what we have in common, and it just works out fine. And so I yeah, I just I have found my answer to my psychological answer, because I do feel so strongly that what I found is the very crux of mental health, where you learn to let go of anger, and you learn to let go of resentment and
Yes, exactly.
jealousy. You let
Yeah.
go of all that, maybe not instantly, but you have tools, so you're not marinating it in it anymore.
Yes. Yes.
So I found the psychologies, but the religion is, for me, I just adore all of them. And if I say, and if had I found this and I was trying to juxtapose it with Christianity, I'm not sure how. I don't know, because I had come kind of so far from any kind of rules and regulations.
Yes.
But the essence of Christianity, the love of Christianity, the faith, the joy, all of those parts, I could, I tell myself sometimes, I say, girl, really wouldn't have had to just do all that. You could have just taken the Bible and just looked at the joyful parts, the love, the parts about love, the parts about all of the good stuff, and just made that bigger and bigger and bigger and focused on that. And you could have just stayed right where you were. And I do believe that's kind of
Yes.
what it would
Mhm.
take for a belief
Exactly.
system.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for that. Yes. We are agreed. Law of attraction is at the basis of every religion.
Exactly. Exactly. But then if you try to juxtapose all of the teachings that
Yes.
you try to adhere to the rules
Yes.
and do what other people, what's considered to be the thing to do,
Mm.
then you're kind of,
Then
as
you hit the trouble because the rules are what, maybe there was some reasoning for those rules way back in the past, but they're not relevant to this day and age and this life.
yes,
Whereas what I have discovered about law of attraction in the teachings of Abraham specifically, because that is the school of law of attraction I belong to, is that it's fluid and it's flexible. And I've heard Abraham say the more rules you make, the more difficult your life will become. So you don't make rules.
yes,
And the only rule really is that all things are possible.
yes, yes,
That's the only rule. And if you're making any other rules, then there's resistance in them. Then you are sacrificing what Abraham calls freedom, growth, and joy. You are sacrificing an element of freedom, growth, or joy by making a rule.
yes. Exactly. Exactly. That is so true. And Abraham says all laws and rules are made from a place of resistance. Resistance meaning
Exactly.
focusing
Exactly.
on negativity.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
So
So, but if you focus just on the loving parts of it, I think you could have and I see churches of any denomination or belief system where I do find that those places exist where people
Yes,
are focused. They're focused on the love, and I think you see miracles in those churches.
exactly.
Miracles, quote
That's true.
unquote.
Yep.
People have prayers answered in dramatic ways
Yes.
because they're not putting together, they're not watering down the love and the joy with the rules. Okay, wait a minute, but God might be mad at me over this or that or the other thing. And then it's just, it just becomes kind of just not, I won't say dead, but it loses its vitality. But I think there are wonderful, I mean, I see it even around here. I see some
Yes.
churches and people are just turned on, like the church where I initially went, and they are just, and if that works for you, by golly, that,
Exactly. If it works for you, go ahead. And you know what, Karen, I had that in my life where my brother and my sister-in-law are very religious and it works for them. And
yes,
so it's like, go ahead, do what works for you. Right?
yes,
Yes.
absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. So, well, okay, so now I have a request of you. Will you please share with us some of your beautiful poetry that I have seen you share in your group? Do you have
Oh,
anything handy?
oh, it's all online, my dear. Oh yeah, the soul songs. Oh, that is so sweet of you to ask. Um,
Mhm.
well,
And I love how fun you are because I've heard you, like I've seen you dancing and singing, and I'm just like, oh, the multa. I'm like, wow, look at this woman. She is so full of life and so funny. And I just, yes, I really appreciate those. And if you don't have them, that's okay. Send me a sample and I'll put it in there.
okay, I will. I mean, I've got them right here. Yeah, I could. I'm just always with Zoom. I'm like, I don't want to lose Zoom. Don't let me
No,
lose
you're
Zoom.
fine. No, no, you're fine. You're
But
fine. Go ahead.
but I think, yeah.
And your continuous search for finding peace in your heart led you from one place to another place to all these issues with health and then recovery. And it's such a beautiful journey of then arriving at this place where now you can see all of it and you can see all of it fitting together, and it's just so beautiful. And I so again, I am so grateful that you shared this journey. It's
Oh,
so beautiful, and I am so happy for you that you are at peace and you have these three beautiful children and bonus children. And I am so appreciative of the work that you do in the community, in the law of attraction community.
thank you.
uh, the Abraham Fund group is definitely, it has been my home for I don't even know how many years. And and I've seen it grow, and it is now massive. Do you want to tell us how many people you have in there?
It's 50,000 and some.
50,000
Yeah,
plus, yes.
yeah,
Amazing, amazing. And certainly I've offered free classes in there, thanks to you. And I think it's a beautiful community, and you do such a good job of not only sharing law of attraction, but also sharing cartoons and fun things. And
yeah,
it's
yeah.
a
I
very
I
nice place.
those things go
Thank
to the funny stuff and the law of attraction stuff. It just goes together
you
hand in
together.
hand. I find, yeah, it's all about happiness and joy and feeling as good as we can feel, and that's just
Absolutely.
it. Yeah.
So, in closing, Karen, do you want to tell our listeners and viewers, because it will go on to YouTube as well, um, tell tell them where to find you, and tell them what you've got going on that they might be interested in.
Okay, thank you, Zara. Well, so I have a website and it's my name, KarenMoneyWilliams.com. And at that place you can find the ebooks I've written, and I think there are 12 of them altogether. And so that's where those reside. And then a little overview of my background, which I've already pretty much related, but that's written there. And then the Abraham group on Facebook that I have is Abraham Fun, just simple Abraham Fun. And everybody is welcome there. It is a private group, so you have to kind of ask to be, but there's no judging whether you get on or not. You just go through a process and you are admitted to it very readily. And let's see, and then if you would happen to live in the Orlando, Florida area, we do have a meetup. It's called, let me get this right here, Orlando Area Abraham Hicks and Law of Attraction Meetup. Once a month, we meet at a local library, and our group is new, but it's growing, and there's a lot of interest in Abraham in this area, we find. And so we're doing that. So it's on meetup.com, Orlando Area Abraham Hicks and Law of Attraction. So anyway, I guess that's about it, really. And yeah, that kind of sums it up.
Thank you so much once again, Karen. This was so much fun.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it. Thank you for being here. And I would love for you to come back and, share some more of your law of attraction wisdom. But thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Sarah. I am so honored, and I appreciate all you do so much. Everything you said to me, I could say right back to you, because I appreciate all you do in our community. So thanks, Oodles. And yes, I'd love to come back.